Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults. All right, welcome everyone to the Pivotal Podcast. I am so excited to be joined by my good friend, Andrea Sawtell. Andrea, how are you?
I am awesome because it's sunny and shining outside and it's finally warm. So,
All right, let's remind our people you're in York, PA, right?
not York.
Not York. Sorry, I know somebody else in York. You're in
Technically, North Wales is where my house is, but Lansdale area outside
North
of
Wales. I always think that's like over in England or something. Like it sounds so like British or something.
Sophisticated, which I am clearly not. So.
I mean, when you can't say sophisticated, that really tells the story, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
I love you, Andrea. You're just so great. All right. Anyway,
I got you, Jerry.
So the weather's nice up there. I always want PA is kind of a crapshoot when it comes to weather. You just don't know. And I'm here in Central Virginia, same thing. It could be 30 and then by the afternoon it's 80. It's just insane. But it happens to be beautiful today here too. So yeah.
Listen, you know who's not in a nice, sunny, warm place is our guest today, Jojo Golden.
Jojo.
Oh my gosh.
What a nice segue to introduce our guest, Jojo Golden.
He's in upstate New York. I grew up in upstate New York. I feel for him. So
upstate New York. Yeah.
See, but here's the thing. So yeah, my name's Jojo Golden. I live in upstate New York. But here's the thing is I live on like the border of New York and Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So I'm basically PA. I don't claim PA because I would never do that. But I mean, it's probably just as sunny here, but it's only like maybe 60 max right now. But it's a beautiful day outside here.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Which is like a first for New York. So
nice. Yeah. So we're all just living our best life today, weather wise. So that's great. Well, Jojo, thanks for being a guest on the Pivotal Podcast. And our listeners can already tell you have your own podcast. You just have that honey sweet voice. You got a great podcast voice. So
yes.
Right off the bat, tell us about your podcast. Let's cross-pollinate here. Let's pump your podcast up.
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Insignificant Others with my buddy Will Campbell. Him and I have been really good friends for about 6 to 7 years at this point. We just decided to start a podcast. Like we have our podcast system and we were just like, you know what, let's start a podcast together. Like this is just like, it's a family friendly podcast where we literally talk about just random things that happen in our week. Like just this week we ranked fast food chains. So like it's a lot of different family style conversations where we talk about funny things that happen in our lives and yeah, stuff like that. And you can check that out on Spotify. You can check that out on our website on Insignificant Others. But yeah, it's just been a lot of fun, and I really really enjoy it.
Awesome.
It's always funny when you start a podcast because like when I listen to myself back, like during a recording, I'm like, man, I really don't like the sound of my own voice, but I love doing it, so like I'm not gonna stop doing it. So. Yeah.
I don't know anyone. I've never met anyone who really likes the sound of their own voice. Like I know that this is not what I sound like. I know I'm hearing it in here and you're hearing it out there. This is not me. I'm going to listen to this later. I'm going to be like, oh, it's terrible.
Can I tell you a fun fact since you're talking about voices for a second?
Yeah.
My neighbor claims I sound exactly like Amy Poehler. And because you don't hear your own voice. So anytime he sees me, he's like, what's up, Poehler? And he played like a little clip from her once. And I was like, oh my gosh, that does sound like me. I sound like her.
That's so funny.
Anyway,
I'm a huge Amy Poehler fan. I never thought of that, but now that you said it, I can't not think it from now on.
I'm sorry. I ruined you.
All I'm hearing is Amy Poehler.
Just put that in there. So
I'm infected now. Yeah. Oh, that is hilarious. She has a great podcast too, by the way. I've only listened to a couple episodes, but yeah, hers is super fun. Anyway, not family friendly like JoJo's is, but yeah. But yeah, funny. Anyway, so thank you everybody. This is by our count, episode 6 of the Pivotal Podcast. and we're plodding right along. We're going to be in the hundreds in no time. Just kidding. I'll be dead by then at this rate. But we're having a great time. Thank you everyone for joining. And if I forget to say this at the end, Jojo knows the spiel. We would love it if you would leave a review and subscribe to receive notifications. We're on Spotify and YouTube. We don't have our own website like some podcasts do, but we are on YouTube and Spotify. And someday I'm going to figure out how to get us on Apple Podcasts. So this may be the one. I don't know. If it is, all you Apple lemmings out there, conformists. Yeah, I talk to Android people like they're the ones who think. Like, oh, you're a free thinker. I see. We give them heck for the green bubbles in the group text, but I try and make up for it by just affirming them. You're not just following the crowd. You're going to do your own thing. Good for you. Anyway, that was unplanned. All right, so we're going to dig into our conversation today with Jojo. Jojo, I'll just say this is behind the scenes, but I know another Golden. I know a couple of Goldens. Are you related to those Goldens, Andrea? Do you know Noah Golden, Timothy?
Well, no, Noah Golden's my business partner with my donut truck.
Oh,
So,
that Noah. Okay. Yeah,
but
yeah.
they are unrelated. They're
Okay.
We
unrelated.
are indeed unrelated.
Okay. Well, Golden, I don't know who you can get a better name than Golden. I mean, that's
I
Golden,
agree.
right? That's such a great name.
But I
Jojo.
am good friend. I am good friends with Pastor Tim Golden
Okay.
and his brother
Okay.
Noah.
Yeah.
Um,
Those
my
guys
fun fact: my brother, who's also a Golden, goes to Andrea's church. So,
Okay. All right.
We
Wow.
love all the Goldens.
And round we go. What a small world. Small world after all. All right. Well, Jojo, we like to just dig into conversations by asking our guests a number of questions. And our first one is we just wanted you to tell us about your faith journey and how would you describe it as it is right now?
hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, I was born and raised in the church, the Nazarene church. My parents were worship directors at every church I've ever been to. Um, but I was kind of like growing up, I was very so-so with my faith, like I was just kind of like walking the walk and yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe in God, like all those kinds of things. And all while kind of remaining behind the scenes in a way that I really didn't walk my faith like I should have been, right? Like I went on to all the VBSs. I claimed that I understood all of that stuff, and in all honesty, I didn't. I didn't really know what it meant to be walking in faith and all of that. And then I really started to kind of take it seriously my senior year when COVID hit, of high school, that is. And about a month before I went to college, my father sat my family down and he told us that he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh,
And stage 4, if you know anything about pancreatic cancer as a whole, from stage 1 to 4, the minimum chance or pretty much the max chance you have to survive is around 10 to 15%. So at that point, we really knew what was coming for my dad, that he was going to be called home at some point, sooner than we really wanted. And I had gone home to surprise my family Halloween weekend. Like they didn't know I was coming. Me and my brother planned it out. I went home, and that exact same weekend, my dad passed. I woke up on Sunday morning, and he was gone.
wow.
But I look back at that moment, and I thank God for that moment because I was able to see my father one last
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
Like he was able to see my sister, my brother, and I all before he passed one last time, which was like such a God thing, if you ask me. And but that was really where I started to walk away from my faith. I really believed that God took my father from me, and instead of viewing it as his everlasting mercy that he bestowed upon my father, I really looked at it as his wrath, and I wasn't okay with that. And then the summer came around of my freshman year of college, and a good buddy of mine who's a pastor now in Quincy, Massachusetts, he had called me one day, and he said, "Hey, I know you and I had talked about doing this summer ministry program for Eastern Nazarene College." He's like, "Do you still have interest in that?" And I said, "Man, like, I don't know, man. I'm like, my faith is not in the greatest point. I really am not in the greatest place with God right now. And he just said, he stopped me there and he was like, we'll work on that. Like it. And I think that was one of the first pivotal moments of me deciding to kind of walk back into my faith, and getting back into that relationship with the Lord that I had lost because I pushed him away. Right. And over the course of those 3 years, there were people that came into my life, like Andrea, was one of the first people in college that really started to influence my life and say, hey, like, we got to get this back on track. We've been able to see a difference in who you are without your faith. Right. And, those were really pivotal moments. And then, my internships came around at the church I'm currently employed at, in a We Go Church of the Nazarene. My pastor, who's my biggest mentor, my biggest supporter, is Pastor Jay Geisdorfer. Um, he really walked alongside me in those summers and throughout college, just to kind of get me on track and kind of understand that, um, along with the grief that I was feeling, there should be celebration that happens because I know where my father is, right? Like, God bestowed mercy upon my dad instead of having to continue for him to struggle with the chemo and radiation that was killing his body, right? And, um, now I'm at the point in my life where, God has called me to ministry. It's funny. I've told God no many times, and he slapped me across the face many times. First time was say, I'm never going to go to Eastern Nazarene College. I'm not going to follow in my brother's footsteps. And I graduated being the last class of Eastern Nazarene College. Told God I didn't want to end up in ministry. I don't belong in ministry. And now I'm working for a church and preaching when Pastor Jay is not here. So it's just funny how God works. And, I'm getting married in August. I have a very loving fiance. Her name is Allie, and she came from Andrea's church before Andrea, got there. But she's an amazing lady, and, God is just so good. Like, I look back on my life, and there are those moments where, um, if it weren't for those moments, I don't think I'd have the faith walk that I have now.
Yeah.
And I thank God for those moments. I truthfully thank God every day for what he's done in my life.
Mhm.
Like, even if it was every trial, every hardship, like, I would relive through all of that if it meant where I am today. Like, so my faith's at an all time high. I've just been seeing God move in our church and in my life and in my fiance's life, and, especially in my family's life. My family's growing. My brother just got married in December. Um, but my faith is truly at an all time high. And he's on the move in our community, and that's visible for everybody to see.
Yeah.
We just hit, a congregational max at Easter with 1,100 people, that had came through our doors, which is unbelievable because 6 years ago our church was barely breaching 150 people. So it's just God just blowing up in this area, and in my life and in my family's life and the staff's life here, and it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
truly amazing.
Wow. Awesome. Incredible story. Jojo, as I'm listening to you, there were critical moments in your story, and especially in your faith struggles, where people who loved you enough to step in the way of your path, and walk with you through the struggles that you were dealing with. And I'll just speak for myself. As a pastor to young adults, um, sometimes I struggle with, where is that line? Do I interject myself at this point, in their life? If I do, what do I say? Because I'm not really sure. And I know I'm putting you on the spot. Is there any kind of, because you've lived through this and you've had people in your life who have done that with you and for you, is there any advice, any encouragement that you can give to those who seek to only walk with young adults, regardless of where they are spiritually, and encourage them? Do you have any words, anything that you would say to someone in that position?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of it is accountability. I am a big advocate for accountability because I think growth is hard without it. I have accountability partners of my own. I run with one of my buddies. We run a college men's group of Pretty much everybody that we knew in college that are men that are seeking the Lord. And Andrea knows everybody in this group, so she'd be, I don't know if she knows this, but she'd be excited to know the people in that group. But um, yeah, it's just but we are always checking in with each other. Like we are always being accountable to each other in the point where sometimes calling out to people is the only way we reach them.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if I'm doing something stupid, I expect someone to call me out for it.
Yeah.
Um, or if I'm doing something that is interfering with my walk, I expect one of my people to be like, "Hey, you got to knock that off."
Yeah.
Like, um, and the only thing about that is I don't think everybody responds to it the same way.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, in my opinion, young adults are, other than like obviously like the infant stage, are the most easily moldable people because you need to be able to reach that, if that makes any sense. Like,
Mm.
um, they are the most influenced, if that makes any sense. Like, in my opinion, I don't think the church does a great job in reaching young adults because the world offers more than what the church does. And that's hard. I think that's really difficult because we're meant to be not conformed to this world. Um, but I think the part about it is that if we can reach young adults, if we can find ways to reach young adults and meet them where they're at, I think that's the biggest part is being able to meet young adults where they're at. Because if we aren't reaching them, the world is. And I think that's a really it's a hard pill to swallow. But I think that's just the reality of where our world is because our young adults, when you get to the stage of young adult, that's like in my world right now, I would love to experience the world because of my age. Like this is my prime, right? Um, but my want to glorify God is greater than that of my need to want to experience the world. Um, and I think it's hard to get young adults to realize that, if that makes any sense. Um, but that's a whole nother tangent. But I mean, I just think in truthful accountability, accountable transformation will allow for young adults to grow in their faith if we can hold them accountable, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, man, first of all, you sound 1,000 times more mature at this stage of your life than you did several years ago. Like it's so, I've known Jojo for a while and he is one of my favorite people. He has a contagious joy about him. He's crazy. He does wild things. But it's so fun. It's so fun to watch you from far away, like for God to just like capture your heart. And I think you've done some of the hard work, even through the stuff that you experienced with your dad and like pursuing faith and pushing away and letting people speak into your life. Like I think all of that's really beautiful. I think that that topic of accountability and like we literally just talked about this on our young adult retreat. I was in a small group and you said everybody responds to it different, right? Like you have to want accountability in your life. And I think like the church as a whole, we don't do that well, like
Mm,
whether it's young adults or older adults. And in order to do that, you have to like pursue relationship with people and you have to take the time to do life and do community with people. But that accountability piece is key. And you can't just speak accountability pieces into a young adult's life like without
right.
actually like leaning in and doing life with them. And so I just think it's such a cool thing to hear a young adult say like I actually want the accountability. Like I want that in my life. I want you to press in and ask me hard questions. And I just wish like we did that better in the church, like as a
Mm,
whole, like that we would see more because I think that does help you like pursue God better. I think it helps you grow in your faith. And so I just like that's all to say like props and comment. I have heard about your Bible study that you have because I think Jacob's in your Bible study. I'm assuming that's the same one. But to have like a group of young adult men who are saying, ask me hard things and like hold me accountable. I just like that should give hope to anybody that's listening that like young adults aren't just walking away, like they want that in their life. And Yeah, I think you're a testament. I think your spiritual growth isn't just because like you grew up. It's because you've pressed into hard things and that's just cool. So anyway,
Mm.
that's my 2 cents. I don't have a question.
Yeah.
He's
That is
awesome.
really good. Yeah, you were right, Jojo. That is a bitter pill for someone like me to swallow, to hear like the world offers far more than someone like me can offer. Or if I don't step into that gap, then plenty of other influences are going to step into that gap in a young person's life, and probably take them in a direction that is detrimental or maybe even destructive, in the short term or the long term, in their life. So I really appreciate that encouragement. That puts wind in my sails, and to maybe even be a little more forward, a little bolder when it comes to caring well for the young people that are in my life. Because sometimes as a person where I am in my life, it's almost like you're watching this car crash and you're not really sure like how to engage that, or like
Mm,
where these decisions are going to go.
mm,
But sometimes I feel like, well, what do I how do I interact with, standing in front of them and just waving my arms and saying like, please don't go that way.
mm,
I and a lot of other people went that way and it never works out.
mm.
So I appreciate that encouragement, which I think it kind of segues into our next question really well, which is what is something that you see as a common issue that's facing young adults? You had talked about accountability and having people in your life just to be able to speak the truth in love. But what other things, or if you want to kind of dance on that same issue a little bit more, that's totally fine too. But what do you see as something that's a common issue that's facing young adults today?
I think in my personal opinion, I think it's the idea of taking their faith seriously. Like I was kind of saying, like we are like whatever age it is, whether it's 21 to 29 or whatever you consider a young adult, like that is the prime of a human being. Like that's when you're really seeking a relationship, whether it be with a significant other or
Yeah.
like your friends, or that's when you start to become maybe a parent. Like it's really that idea of um, the world offers more, but if the world offers more, what can we offer that can pull them away from the world?
Yeah.
I think young adults really struggle because there are things in the world that are clearly sin that the world offers,
Right.
that is so much more comfortable than sitting in a church, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and that's really difficult. Um, Pastor Jay just spoke a message yesterday where he talked about if we aren't reaching young adults, um, we're losing the next generation
Mhm.
of leaders. And like there are even some young adults in our church where they aren't coming anymore. Um, and Pastor Jay did a little bit of a calling out of our church, saying if we need to be better about reaching them when they're here, love on them,
Mhm.
care for them, get them back in this building because that's where God wants them.
Mhm.
Instead of being out in the city and clubbing and drinking and substance abuse, like all of that that the world offers that seems greater than what we have to offer.
Mhm.
But what we have to offer in the church is ever way more everlasting than anything else the world can offer,
Mhm.
right? Um, but I think it's that hard balance of, again, that goes back to accountability. Like even if it's a young adult new in faith and is struggling with the things of their past, um, being able to help come alongside them and help them look forward instead of like Lot's wife looking backwards and missing out on what they have in their future that God has for them, I think is a big part. But it's that balance of um, keeping them here and also trying to get them to change, if that makes any sense. Like it's just a difficult balance,
Mhm.
and I don't think we'll figure it out for years to come. because some things will work and some things won't.
Right.
Like things that we do in our church could be completely different in what you guys do in your churches, right? Like just because we're a different community, we're a different demographic. There are different things in our community that people can do other than whatever. Like, but I think it's really that idea of um, pushing through the message that what we have to offer is greater than anything else that the world has to offer.
Yeah.
But it's hard to get that through without pushing some buttons, right? But yeah.
It's true. Andrew and I are part of kind of a national conversation with other leaders in young adult ministry. And one of the struggles, just to kind of play off something that you just said, one of the struggles is that it can be such a niche thing, and it can be such a localized thing to minister to the culture of young adults where I am versus the culture of young adults where you are. And I think that there are best practices, there are some transferable principles, but a lot of it is no. These are the people that I'm working with, and they're not always going to be cookie cutter to young adults in the Northwest or in the South or wherever the case may be. So I think it's a really good encouragement to young adult leaders to always make sure you contextualize the things that you're doing. What does it mean to minister to young adults where I am right now?
Mm.
And what did they need most for me? So yeah, that's good. All right, and that brings us to our last question for Jojo. In what ways do you feel that the way the church views and handles young adults should change? In other words, like if you could wave a wand and have the church at large view or minister to or walk with young adults differently, what would that look like?
Yeah, I think there's two different things about the church that I think could change. I think there's a lot of churches, maybe not even the big C church, um, where, in my opinion, I think the older generation isn't quite ready to let go of the reins, um, because I think they don't trust the next generation,
Mm.
which is difficult. Because like the church is going to need new leaders at some point, right? The church is really going to need to come alongside these young adults who are going to become the next generation of disciple makers. But if they're not doing that, then we aren't doing our job, like the Great Commission tells us to do. Um, but I think the church needs to get better about discipling the young adults that we have now.
Mhm.
Um, I think the Big C church not necessarily fails, because I think fails might be a bad way for it, but they lack. I think a big heavy portion of what we talk about in our church is what it means to be a disciple and how to get these people that are new in faith, whether they are young adults or not, to create them to be disciple makers as we're discipling them.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it that we lack in the church is reaching the young adults and telling them what it means to be a disciple. I think the church as a whole could do better. Um, I think there are lots of churches that are out there now that do it well, because they are reaching that demographic. But I think we just need to be better. I think if we continue, sure, yeah, we can get a young adult in the door, but if they're just coming in on a Sunday and leaving a Sunday, and that's the only time they have a faith, then we are failing.
Yeah.
We need to be better about creating disciples and making disciples of all nations and of all demographics, whether they be 7 or 8 years old or whether they be 72. Right? I think the church needs to be better about being able to develop and create disciple makers in the church,
Yeah.
if
What
that makes any sense.
Jojo, what do you if you could give like a couple practical ways, what would it look like to disciple young adults? So when you talk about this discipleship, what would it look like for a church to do that?
Yeah, I think at our church we do this thing called the Basic Bible Study, and it's a small little packet that you run through week by week that just gives a big overview of the Bible. It really takes you through the Bible stories, the prophecies that were fulfilled when Jesus came, and what it means for when Jesus is coming back. It gives you a grand overview of what the Bible is really teaching us or what the Bible's lessons are, right? And it's not even the lessons; it's also the historical facts, the historical context of like Paul's letters. I think it should start with the Word. Um, I think the biggest part of being a follower of Christ is understanding God's Word,
Mm.
and I think if we don't start with that, we're going to lose them off the bat. I think it's like I don't believe in a denomination. I believe in the Word of God. Like it that goes for the Big C Church as the church, not just the Protestant Church or the Roman Catholic Church. Like we need to be better about understanding God's Word and truthfully having that as the foundation of our church, our community, our relationships, and our faith. I think that's a huge part of it. Um, but yeah, being able to walk alongside someone who has questions about the Bible, and being able to walk them through that, not just to answer their questions, but to dive deeper in those questions when those questions are asked.
You touched on something I think is just so key, Jojo, and that is helping. I mean, we're talking about young adults, but really all followers of Jesus, helping them know how to make another follower of Jesus. I don't think you can make something that you are not. So,
Mm,
being a disciple and making disciples, those two things will always go hand in hand. And I've taught my students that I don't think you really know something until you can give it to somebody else.
mm,
That's really the proof of knowing something really well. It's in your bones, it's in your DNA. When you're able to pass it off and teach it and convey it to somebody else in a way that they can take it and learn it and embrace it and pass it on to somebody else. Otherwise, I think what we call discipleship is really just information conveyance, that I'm giving you information to fill up your mind. But if it stops there, like a cul-de-sac or something, it doesn't go anywhere. Then that's not doesn't seem to me to be disciple making
mm,
disciples who make disciples, as the saying goes, because that's how we got here. All the three of us,
mm,
like somebody told somebody who told somebody who told us, and
mm,
we can all trace our lineage back to, one of the 12 apostles, who went out and told somebody who told somebody who told your grandma, who told your parents, who told you. So
right.
it's that type of, I don't know, cyclical, I guess, understanding. Does the gospel end with me? I think is a really a poignant question that maybe,
Mm,
and maybe a tough question that we ought to always ask ourselves. Am I the one who's kind of clogging up the works when it
Mm.
comes to making disciples? I
mm,
just stepped into, just a few months ago, director of discipleship at the church that I'm at. And so I'm swimming in this whole topic every single day, in addition to being young adult pastor. So all of my thoughts, even more than before, are based on how are we making disciples. So I appreciate your insight on that. And the Big C Church has so much to learn from the voice and the heart of young people,
mm,
who are still, you're still hanging in with us, and
mm,
I think a lot have just kind of like thrown their hands up, said, "Oh, screw you guys, I'm going to go, do something else."
mm,
But there are young people who are part of the family, and we need those voices desperately to come and speak. Who was it famously said, maybe Josh McDowell just said, the church is always two generations away from closing its doors.
mm,
And there's a I don't know, truth to that. That's kind of a gut punch.
mm,
But if we're not investing if we're not passing that on to the younger generation. There's churches all over our nation who they're really just waiting rooms, and
Mm,
they're just not doing anything.
right.
They don't
Yeah,
know
and
what to do, you know?
I mean, I think it's so important to remember, like I think sometimes when you think about young people, like people think it's an attractional model that we need. Like if we
Yeah.
build it,
Mm,
they'll come. And I don't know. I think churches have done that for a long time and we're not seeing necessarily the return on that. And so when you think about like investing, we're not investing just in like big, awesome worship centers. Like it has to be an investment relationally speaking. Like if you're going to disciple people, you have to take the time to like actually spend time with them. And so
yeah.
I think that discipleship and going back to like your accountability conversation earlier, like I mean, if we want to see young people stay in the church and then, also lead and take over the reins and disciple other people or people in general, like relationship is key to that.
Mm,
That requires us like I think we're just super busy. And so we think we're gonna like, I don't know, just build all this stuff, people are gonna come to it. But it's the time. And I think Jojo, back to like the very beginning of this conversation, like you have had people over the course of your life and current now investing in you relationally and taking the time to do life with you. And now you're doing that with people that come into your life. Like you are
mm,
literally doing what you've just described.
Right.
And it's just a beautiful thing, but it takes time. I mean, like
yeah.
it's not having tons of resources and nice things. It's literally just like mentoring and taking the time. So that should be an encouragement to the church that's listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I had two things that I wanted to bring up, and one of them is accountability can't exist without vulnerability.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge part of it. It was where if you have an accountability partner, if you're not 100% transparent with them, you're not going to get much out of it. I think that's something young adults do struggle with. I think it struggles even in the next generation. The next generation really struggles with the idea of identity, the identity, sexuality, all of that. And I think the struggle is if they aren't comfortable with being vulnerable, whether it be young adults, teenagers, or even adults. I think accountability can't exist without vulnerability, and that's something that's really difficult. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was uh, I think the church struggles with the balance of patience and urgency.
Mm,
Um, I think with the next generation coming up, there needs to be a sense of urgency. But at the same time, there needs to be lots of patience. I think a lot of churches struggle because they either are way too patient or they're way too urgent. Because if you're way too urgent, you're going to push them out of the door. But if you're way too patient, they're going to walk out on their own.
Yeah.
So I think that being able to find that balance is, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's definitely something that I think the church as a whole needs to be like, we need to get on this. Like, we need to be able to find that healthy balance of um, not wanting them to leave, um, but wanting them to stay here because we have something greater for them.
Hmm.
good.
Yeah.
So
That's a good word, Jojo. Thank you. The urgent and the patience. I think you really hit it. Finding any local church needs to find their conduit, their avenue for connecting with the younger generation and then communicating care, not in a patronizing way, but in a way that's like we need you in our community. We need you to be a part of what God is doing here. And I do think that there's a desire, even on the part of boomer generation. I know there are people in my church who have the whitest, grayest, purple hair, and they will get tears in their eyes when they talk about young people because they love the young generation so much. But I think that they feel powerless to or the gap is too big or the cultural differences are too broad for them to be able to communicate that.
Mm.
So a local church finding their voice in making a connection with young people, and then communicating their desire, not just to like, hey, tag along with us, but we want to know, like, how can we walk together, how can we encourage each other. I know there's a lot of churches that are growing young, and that's been, coming out of Fuller. That's been a really big movement over the last several years, and I love that. But I'm also not looking for all young people, in the congregation or in our spiritual communities. We need every generation,
Mm,
and I think the things that you've pointed out today really underscore some of the practical things that we can do to help integrate young people better and giving them the authority in a manner of speaking. That's not really,
mm,
the reins and the voice at the table, so to speak, of how is the church going to move forward.
mm,
God put me in my generation for those purposes, and he brought you into your generation for his purposes as well. You're gonna be way more effective reaching the young generation even than I am. And so you're kind of a ambassador of grace and a missionary to your young generation. But we have to have partnership in
mm.
those things. Yeah.
Truth.
So thank you so much for sharing all that, Jojo. It's been really good to talk with you. Um, Andrea or Jojo, any closing thoughts? Anything else you want to share?
I just think you're a total encouragement.
Yeah.
So, and this is wisdom. It's good.
Yeah.
It's good stuff for us to think on. So, and I appreciate you leaning in to your own journey. I mean, it helps because I've known you for a while, but I mean, just watching your own growth and pursuing what you needed to pursue and doing the hard things, and then in turn calling others to do that. Like, I just think that's awesome to watch. So,
Mm,
yeah. So it's gonna be fun to watch your journey unfold and the years to come. So it's
mm,
awesome. It's good.
Yeah.
mm,
Awesome. Jojo, thank you so much for all you've contributed. I know this is going to be a huge encouragement and a blessing to a lot of young adults and a lot of older people who love young adults.
Yeah.
mm,
People like Andrea and I, they're all over our country, that are just, we're doing our dead level best to connect with and encourage and kind of get behind the young generation and just the accountability and the unity and the intimacy, the things that you've talked about.
mm.
Yeah, that's kind of our bread and butter every day, as they say. So thank you for speaking those words. They're gonna impact a lot of people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always.
Awesome. Great. Well, thanks everybody for being a part of the Pivotal Podcast. That's another episode in the can, and we are so excited for this little project. Thanks for watching. If you want to leave a review or share it with somebody, another young adult or a young adult ministry leader that you know, so it can be encouragement to them. Thanks again, Jojo. And as always, Andrea, thank you so much.
Yes. Peace out, everyone.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Thanks, Jojo.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining in the Pivotal Podcast, where we talk about young adults with young adults.